The moment you stop waiting to be chosen and start choosing, everything changes. Shauna Wu shares how she did it. This is part two of my conversation with Shauna Wu. Let's continue where we left off last time. So, what's the biggest mindset shift you made that caused the most powerful change in your reality so far?
So the biggest mindset shift for me was moving from I hope I'm chosen to I choose. That changed everything. Instead of waiting for validation, I didn't ask for permission. I started operating as a peer, a builder, a strategic partner. Um, when you show up that way, the world responds differently, and opportunities no longer feel scarce. They feel created. It's very, I believe in the power of manifestation. So that goes along with believing in yourself, right? So if you wake up every morning and you ask yourself, who do you want to be today? You want to be the person that you said you're going to be? Okay, let's do it, right? Simple mindset shifts like that and not asking for permission. I think for a long time, especially working in the corporate world, there was so much red tape and I had to ask for, 10 approvals to get something done. And now I'm operating as a CEO of my own time and business and I get to make those decisions, right? So it's just a very different it's a big mindset shift for sure. um but I don't ask for permission anymore. I just
Right.
go and I do.
Yeah. And you know what's funny is even if we think we don't choose, we it's still a choice to not choose.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So there's this whole chapter around the word choice. I love it, and it could be a complete different, a new episode. I actually just posted something today on LinkedIn about choosing every single day, even if you didn't make even if you think you didn't make a great choice yesterday, you can choose new every single day. But this is,
Yeah.
of course, about something a little bit of a different focus that you talked about. But this
Yeah.
word choice, it's so rich. It's so rich,
Mhm.
right? And when we know we have choice, which we always do, we just sometimes forget. And when it becomes easier to actually exercise that choice, like in your case, because now you're your own boss, right? Then of course that is marvelous. So talking about mindset, we have mindset shifts and that are very conscious, and then we also have all this subconscious stuff going on. That's why with my clients I do a lot of subconscious work to uncover subconscious limitations, whether that's beliefs, traumas, or whatever, right? Or emotions. So what's the deepest stuff, if you don't mind sharing this, what's the deepest stuff you uncovered, and how did you transmute it for yourself?
um I'm going to ask you
Mhm.
how you want me to answer this because I could answer it a couple ways. Do you want to know what I uncovered during my sabbatical, or do you want to know what I uncovered in my life story?
Look, now you have me choose, right? You just talk
Yes.
about. Okay, let's go for the life story. I
So
made
the
it
life story, um, statistics say that I wasn't supposed to be successful.
interesting.
I had a very rough childhood and upbringing.
Mhm.
Um, every bad thing that you could imagine happening to a child happened to me. And that's part of the reason, part of why I didn't finish college. There was a traumatic event that happened. There was domestic abuse, and I had somebody arrested, and I had to perform and sing the next day. And that's when I decided I'm done. I'm going to go travel as a musician, and that really defined me beyond just being a survivor. I think what I've uncovered, the biggest thing I've uncovered in my life journey is don't be afraid to work. I think this next generation seems allergic to working. And it's the generations that are older that are not afraid to work. So I had to work every day. I had to fight every day to show up and be who I wanted to be, even though I didn't want to be alive for much of my life. So I say be kind to everyone. You never know what somebody is going through. Um, we're all going through something. There's some level of dysfunction or trauma or family dynamics or personal life. There's something always going on in somebody's life, and you'll never know what it is, right? And for me, I think uncovering my true gifts, the gift of hustle, which I learned from my mom, who passed away 5 years ago at a young age. Um, I learned, uh, like I said, not to be afraid to work. If you want to, I had to work when I was starting at 14 years old, I had to start help paying for stuff, right? And I've been working ever since. I've been working ever since. And I learned that work ethic from my mom, who wasn't afraid to hustle. She was just herself, you know. By
Mhm.
the time she passed away, she was in the top 10 salespeople for Airstreams in the nation, in all of the US. And she was a woman in a male dominated industry,
Right.
right? So there's a silver lining in all of this. Like she working in a male dominated industry, me now working in a male dominated industry, my daughter racing motorcycles against men and beating them, right? So even though I come from a very dark place that I wish to never return to, and thankfully I got help and I have, specialists that I work with, and I've done a ton of healing to be able to even talk about it. I'm covering, sorry, sorry, um,
Good.
uncovering the gift of grit. And you get grit by not being afraid to work. And like I said, had to fight to be here where I am today. Every day is a fight. Every day is a fight.
On the other hand, I mean, you have clearly found something that gives you joy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So because that's then the secret of finding something that gives you joy, the secret of toward not burning out in the process. Because you know, so yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I mean, in your case, the trauma was quite dramatic, but we all, I don't know anybody who hasn't gone through some sort of trauma, because trauma is
Yeah.
actually defined as an experience that where you developed a stuck emotion because you could not express
Yeah.
the emotion at the
It's
time.
universal.
So it's yes, and so it's not always as dramatic as your experience or some other people's experience, but we all have it to a certain extent, right? And that's why I love working with the subconscious because then we can work with that and transmute it and really then also experience that transformation in the process, which you have clearly experienced. And so that's one thing. And yes, I mean, you said you started working when you were 14. So I worked at 14 during vacation to buy my first furniture for my first own room, and then next
Yeah.
time I bought a stereo equipment, with the next
Yes.
vacation work and all of that. But I grew up on a farm, so it was just natural that we also had to help at home. However, my parents always tried to keep it to a minimum because they worked very hard as kids, as very young. And I heard all those stories, but they tried to keep it to a minimum. So yes, I was taking care of my siblings as the oldest quite a bit, and sometimes yes, we had to help a little bit, but it wasn't drudgery. It was not extreme in any way, I cannot say that. But we all like grow up with our stories. That's what I'm getting to. And those stories become part of our identity. So we want to decide, okay, which parts of that identity serves me and which parts do not serve me. So I think that's really important to realize that everything in the end becomes a story, although it's a real story, right? But how much of that story do we want to keep carrying with ourselves, and
Yeah.
how much we want to, or how to what extent do we want to tell a new story, right?
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
that's just what I want to get at. So thank you so much for sharing this and for being vulnerable. It's much
Yeah.
appreciated because people really like hearing that, because a lot of people are afraid of being vulnerable with themselves, admitting things to themselves that could really help them transform, right?
Hmm. Well, and if I can help anybody that's listening, if I helped one person, then I, I define that as success.
Absolutely.
If that means somebody else can talk about their journey and navigate through balancing, motherhood and work and working for the next promotion and getting 8 hours of sleep and drinking enough water and getting exercise and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if I can just help that person
Mhm.
just be a little vulnerable themselves and ask themselves, where do they really want to be and do they believe in themselves? Then I did my work for the day.
That's beautiful. And that's why we're here on this podcast. That's one of the reasons why we're here. So thank you for that. Now, talking about, you mentioned parenting, right? So
Yes.
talking about that, you support women building both careers in sports marketing, and your 16-year-old daughter is already making waves as a motorcycle racer, right? So as you
Yeah.
mentioned before, she's the only girl in her class. She races full tracks. And she started before she was 16 years old, by the way. So how do you think your role modeling influences her? You mentioned your mother and the influence her hustling had on you, but
Yeah.
what can you tell us about that? And yeah, and also about her already being a leader in her space, right? At 16.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's 16 going on probably 25. So um she's very my husband and I were very intentional about raising a an emotionally intelligent individual.
Hmm.
So she's not your typical teenage girl. She doesn't love the drama with all the girls in school with the boyfriends and this and that. She's going to be doing Running Start next year while she's in high school, also going to college, getting college credits. She sees herself racing, and she does race against men, and it's full size track bikes. Um, but she also aspires to be an engineer, and she is very interested in working with her hands. And she inspires me just as much as I inspire her. I think of myself as just an example, and if I can set an example for what women can do in male dominated industries, that's going to help open doors for my daughter, who's going to help open doors for her daughter and their daughter and their daughter, right? Like, this is about legacy, and this is about the next generation. And I'm raising the next generation. And I think what she sees from me is I take risks. I'm always reinventing myself. And again, I'm not waiting for permission. I just go. I have a bias for action, right? Um, and what I see in her is leadership through action. So she just came back from a trip for FCCLA, which is it's in high school. She did food art, culinary art,
Mhm.
and she came back and got gold, and she had never done it before, and she was like so excited. And it's those moments where she's still so young and innocent, but she's on the cusp of being a young woman and an adult. Um, she's not asking for a seat at the table; she's already racing at it. Right?
Mhm.
That's she's
Right.
she's the future, and she's very intentionally flying at a completely different altitude than most kids her age.
Yeah, amazing. And she's, of course, not only, an example for future generations in her family, but also for others, right? Outside of her family. Yeah, beautiful. So on a side note, my friend Susan's daughter, I think I mentioned to you last time, Colette Davis is her name, is a professional racing driver too. She's a pro drifter, and she's currently a Formula Drift prospect driver. I know you asked me last time what the exact term was, and I didn't know, but now I do know. And yeah, so that's also how I got a little bit closer to this sport in the first place,
Yeah.
before meeting you. Yeah. So before we close, would you mind sharing one actionable tool or practice that has made a huge difference for you, and maybe one that we haven't touched on yet that you would like to share with our audience?
I would say there's a lot of things that I talked about, such as believing in
Mhm.
yourself, showing up, being the person that you said you were going to be. I said a lot of things, um, but I'll close with this. So the reason I say don't be afraid to work and work for it, whether it's the version of yourself that you want to be, or it's getting that promotion, or it's becoming an entrepreneur, whatever that is for anybody. Um, if you feel like giving up, there's going to be moments when you feel like giving up. And I almost gave up, right? I almost gave up on life completely many times. And in addition, there's my personal and professional work, right? So if
Mhm.
you ever feel like giving up, just remember the last thing to grow on a fruit tree is the fruit.
Beautifully said. So beautifully said. Really, really powerful. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. A great way to close this out. But last but not least, I still want to know where people can connect with you and your work. What's the easiest place?
The best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. Send me a message. Do what I gave you a tip and say, hey, I listened to your podcast. I love to learn more about XYZ. Um, So I'm happy to connect with folks, answer any, additional, follow-up questions if anybody wants to dig deeper. You can take a look at my website. It's just my name, SHAUNAWU, shaunawu.com. It shares my case studies and my bodies of work and clients that I've worked with. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. I'm not on Twitter or anything like that. So
No need to. Didn't need to be. No, it's great. It's great. LinkedIn is also where I spend more time of those socials. This has been fantastic, Shauna. Thank you so much. I've deeply enjoyed this conversation. I hope you have too.
yes, thank you for having me.
Okay. And to our listeners, thanks for being here. We appreciate you. Tune in again next time. Are you ready to create real change in your leadership, your career, your life? Join me for a complimentary Lead and Thrive session, a 60-minute one-on-one strategy session where we will discuss your specific needs and map out the next steps to lead yourself and others powerfully. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Visit transformyourperformance.com/Lead Thrive session to book your Lead and Thrive session today. Let's work together to make it happen. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe, share it, and join us next time.